Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha. Dear friends, we had seen in the last class how Madhusudana Saraswati explained the world and its cause, the world experience and its cause avidya as inexplicable, anirvachaniya. And we had seen all the reasons behind, because this is anirvachaniya, which cannot be stated either as real or unreal. And now he said that this kind of world experiences is only a postulation or imposition on the pure consciousness called self. Now this consciousness is single, without a second. It is without any attributes, and is of course kutastha. Kutastha means that which is present secretly in all the multitude. Now the objector raises an objection here. Nanu ekaha kutasthaha nirdharmakaha sakshi nadriyate apramanikatvat iti chet. Now the objector says ekaha means single, nirdharmakaha without any attributes or without any qualities, kutasthaha who is present in the multitude secretly, and that kind of an entity cannot be accepted as sakshi, as witness. So this says ekaha kutasthaha, that kind of sakshi is not accepted. Why? Apramanikatvat, because there is no proof. Iti chet, if this is the argument, na, this is not correct. So Madhusudana Saraswati now explains that if anybody thinks that this kind of witness or sakshi is not acceptable, then it is not wrong, it is not true, because tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati na drushter drashtaram pashyehe adrushto drashta nanyo atosti drashta ityadi vadata vedanta pramana rajena tasyaiva sarva sakshitvena abhishiktatvat. Madhusudana Saraswati explains tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. The Upanishads make it very clear that tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. That means on the splendor, on the light, on the energy of this self only, everything, sarvam, everything, anubhati, that means depending on that everything shines forth, everything becomes a matter of experience. But everything is only a matter of experience, whereas the self is the experiencer. Self is the source of experience. Therefore, we should understand that all our outside experience depends on the self. Not only that, tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati, on that splendor of soul only, idam sarvam vibhati, the entire world shines forth. Na drushte drashtaram pashyehe. So this is the Upanishadic statement. So the instructor asks, drushte drashtaram na pashyehe, means don't you perceive, don't you know, don't you understand the presence of the seer, the perceiver behind all the perception, all cognition. How is that? That means, as Kenupanishad explains to us, that behind the visual cognition there is the self. Behind the knowledge we get through ears, get through other senses also, there is the self. And therefore the self is the energy which has been activating this inert body, selfless body, and because of that particular consciousness only, the body, the senses, intellect, everything is active. So he says, na drushte drashtaram pashyehe. So don't you see, don't you understand the presence of that self behind the function of your intellect also? adrushto, drashta. It is not perceived, but it is the perceiver. That means we cannot know it, we cannot understand it, because it itself is the understanding factor, it itself is the knowing factor. That's why the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also says, Vijñātāram areva kena vijaniyat. So how to know about the knower? So whoever tries to know that particular faculty will become himself the knower. And consciousness being the knower, it cannot become a matter of perception or cognition of any type. And this of course is reiterated in the Upanishads also. Na manusa manute ye nahur manomatam tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate na manasa tan manute. So it mentions very clearly that the Brahman or the supreme reality is not perceived mentally also. That means we cannot get any guess or imagination of that reality. But yenahur manomatam. But the Vedic seers say that on account of this particular reality only the mind is able to function, and thus all our mental functions are a result of that particular consciousness. Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi. So it emphatically says that to realize that particular reality as the matter of all, the cause of all perceptions, cognitions. Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate, and not that which has been worshipped or which has been contemplated upon and which has been explained by all the others. It is not the Brahman, but the Brahman is the source of all our cognitions. Na anyaha ataha asti drashta. Ataha anyaha drashta nasti. That's what the construction says. Ataha anyaha drashta nasti means there is no other perceiver than this self. So self is the lone perceiver, self is the lone factor behind all kinds of knowledge. Therefore, knowledge is identified with the self in this Advaita philosophy. Ityadi, and several more Upanishadic sentences can be cited here as pramana in this particular theory. Iti vadata Vedanta pramana rajena. So the Vedanta, which is pramana rajaha, that means Vedantaha or Upanishad is the ultimate proof or evidence, ultimate authority, because we know that there are several kinds of means of valid knowledge. That means the means through which we attain valid knowledge, like direct perception, inference, verbal testimony, and all the other. But when it comes to the Advaita philosophy mentions it very clearly that there are 6 types of valid means of knowledge. 6 types. So pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda, arthanupatti, anupalabdhi. So the 6 are accepted as pramana in the Advaita. But what is the highest authority which cannot be negated or contradicted later on? It is Vedanta. That means the Shruti pramana. And especially the entire Advaita philosophy being based on the Upanishads. The Upanishads alone are the supreme reality here. But of course, in the Upanishad Bhashya, Shankara Bhagavad-pada reiterates that it is not Shruti alone the proof. He says, Anubhavopi pramanam bhavan na nivaryate. That means when personal experience becomes a pramana, it is not denied in Advaita philosophy, and therefore Anubhava also is a pramana, but that Anubhava should be aparoksha Anubhava. That's what the Vedanta says. It is not the material or verbal knowledge of the things there, but it is matter of experience. And here that pramana raja is Vedanta. So Vedantascha asau pramana rajascha. So Vedanta pramana rajaha, that means Vedanta, which is the supreme authority on these matters, says Tasyeva sarva sakshitvena abhishiktatvat. So it has accorded the higher place for this sakshi, sarva sakshitvena. That means the self has been accepted, has been enthroned by this Vedanta as sarva sakshi. That means as the observer of all the transactions. Now, this being answered, now the next thing is Nanu Mahadetad Indrajalam. Now the objector says, this is a big magic. Pramashrayan akutashthan vihaya kutastham apramashrayameva pramanarajaha sarvasakshinam karotiti. Now he says, how can you accept this self as the observer of everything, who is kutastha, who is there in the multitude? So you have two things. One is akutastha, and which is the prama ashraya, which is the substratum of valid knowledge, and the other is kutastha atma, which is not pramashraya. So between these two, how can you prefer the self as sakshi, which is in the multitude and which is not a substratum of valid knowledge? So this is the objection here. Now Madhusudana Saraswati replies, Badham, that's true. Indrajalameva etat. So whatever you have said about this entire process, entire knowledge and the response to the knowledge and all transactions, of course, this is like magic. Etat swapna vat avidya vilasi tatvat. Because the entire world experience is like a magic and it is like a dream. That means which lasts till that particular state lasts. And its reality also depends on the particular state. So the dream experience is negated or denied later on when we come into senses. Similarly, here also the world experience is denied only when one wakes up in that self-realization. So on knowing this particular self in its true nature, the world experience is denied. Therefore, it is like magic. That means its reality or its true nature is temporary, but it is not ultimate reality. Tadhapi drushyasya ghatadivat jadatvena katham pramashriyatvam. Now Madhusudana Saraswati has explained very clearly the standpoint of the Advaita philosophy, that the world experience is like magic, it is like dream experience, so it has no validity, the permanent validity, all that. Now the objection is tadhapi, still drushyasya ghatadivat jadatvena. Now the problem here is the drushya, that means matter of perception, is jada, that means inert, or jada means insentient. Ghatadivat, like the material like pot, etc. So here drushya is jada like pata, ghata, etc. So katham pramashriyatvam, so how can it be accepted as the substratum of valid knowledge? Because we know that knowledge should be in the self. The self should be understood as the base of knowledge. So when a person knows, understands, recognizes, so the substratum of that, ashraya of that, should be the self. That's what the logicians say, jnanadhikaranam atma. Atma is jnana adhikarana. That's what they propound. And now, following that particular theory, this man questions, how can you say that the inert objects also become the locus of valid knowledge? Because the drushya is here the pramata. So how can he be the prama ashraya? And sakshi is other one. The sakshi is the pure self. So he is the observer. And the second one is the pramata. That is the prama ashraya. So he says, if pramata is different from that, then he will be jada or inert like any ghatapata. So how can he be accepted as the base of all experiences? This is the problem. Iti chet na. Now Madhusudana Saraswati makes it clear. Darpanadivat swachhatvena. Darpanadivat swachhatvena. He says it is as pure as a mirror, crystal clear. Chit prabimba grahakatvat. Now you can say chit pratibimba grahaka. That means it can take the reflection of chit chaitanya. That means the intellect with the consciousness, that becomes the Antahkarana Upahita Chaitanya. So that is the Antahkarana is the Upadhi there, and the Antahkarana being pure like a mirror, it can take the semblance of consciousness. Chit Pratibimba Grahakatvat, or you can say Chit Tadatmya Adhyasad Va, or you can say that the inert object also can reflect it because of the superimposition of the identity of consciousness. That means, though it is not consciousness itself, the identity of consciousness is only a superimposed thing on the intellect, and therefore it can further reflect all its properties. As we say, in the world also we observe that if there is fire, the fire can get reflected in the mirror, and the mirror also shows all that just without the heat, all that, but it can reflect the color, the height, the weight, distance, everything of the fire. So here also intellect can reflect all the other properties of that, but itself cannot be consciousness. It is away from that, it is inert. So this can be reconciled with in two ways. One is, you either accept that the intellect is pure like mirror and it can reflect it, or you can say that the consciousness is superimposed on the intellect, and therefore there can be pramashrayatva. Now another argument, nanu nirupasya niravayavasya katham pratibimbaha. Now the problem is, Chaitanya is nirdharmaka, that means it is without any properties. Therefore having a form, having some shape, etc. is out of question here. The consciousness has no form, no shape, etc. Nirupasya. And moreover, since it is an absolute entity, it is secondless entity, there cannot be avayava also, parts also, because we have observed, even according to the Nyaya Shastra, that whatever has parts is bound to perish, that is perishable. And therefore if you say that the self also has parts, then you will have to accept its destruction also. But we have understood in the previous classes also that the Upanishads explain the self, true nature of the self, as indestructible. So imperishable, it doesn't have any destruction at all. Therefore it doesn't have any avayava or parts. Now nirupa and niravayava, that means without any form, without any parts. This is the true nature of self. So that kind of self, nirupa and niravayava, can have any reflection anywhere? That is the doubt here. How can something which doesn't have any form at all be reflected somewhere? So the thing reflecting and the thing reflected, both are important here. How can the intellect which is inert reflect the consciousness? This is one problem. Madhusudana Saraswati explained that because of its purity, because of its nature of reflecting that, it can do that, or you can say the nature of consciousness is superimposed on that. Now how about the consciousness? Because it is nirdharmaka, because it doesn't have any properties at all, any form, shape, color, etc. How can it be reflected in the intellect? That is the second problem. And moreover, it is niravayava. So we understand in the world also, when something is reflected somewhere, we observe that the thing reflected has a form, has some parts, it is limited. So that alone can be reflected somewhere. So if you say that the self also has some reflection, you will have to accept the form, parts, everything of that particular thing reflected. So this is the problem. Iti chet na. Now Madhusudana Saraswati understands the problem and explains Katra Anupapattihi. He says, what is the fallacy here? What is the anomaly here? What is the problem here? Katra Anupapattihi Vibhrama Hetunam Vichitratvat. He explains Vibhrama Hetunam Vichitratvat. That means the cause of magic, cause of illusion, and cause of some misapprehension, that is vichitra, that is varied, that is different, and that is strange. So you cannot attribute a particular pattern to those also, because whatever causes an illusion, its behavior is entirely strange. So Vibhrama Hetunam Vichitratvad, this is also possible that a thing which doesn't have a form also is reflected. How is it justified logically? He says, Japa Kusuma Rupasya Nirupasyapi Sphatikadau Pratibimba Darshanat. So this is one example. He says, this can be answered. You understand, in the world also, when a red flower, Japa Kusuma, red flower, is placed near a crystal, Sphatika. So what does it have? What does it do? The crystal reflects the red color of the flower, and temporarily the crystal also appears to be red. Now we take this example and try to understand the rupa, that means the form of Japa Kusuma itself is Nirupa, because rupa being a guna or quality, it cannot have another quality. So Nirupa should be accepted as the quality of Rupa, because Rupa is a quality and its property should be Nirupa only, because Rupa doesn't have a Rupa. That is the logic here. Rupa being a guna cannot be substratum of other gunas. Guneshu gunaha navartante. So where do they reside? The qualities should have a substance for their substratum. That means dravya or substratum alone is the substance alone is the adhara or locus of all the qualities. So a quality cannot be in another quality. So therefore rupa cannot be in rupa. Therefore the first rupa or the form should be understood as nirupa, but still rupa gets reflected in the crystal. So here also we understand that though consciousness has no rupa at all, it can get reflection. If somebody says at least the first one is quality, so a quality cannot be present in a quality, that is acceptable, but in the present context, consciousness which doesn't have a form is of course not a quality, and therefore your example does not suit totally in this particular context. Thus, if somebody raises an objection, another example can be provided here. He says, Shabdasyapi, Shabda, that is sound, Pratishabdakhya Pratibimbatva Upalambhat. So we observe that the sound which is a quality has a resonance. Pratishabda, a resound. So it is a quality, still it has its reflection called Pratishabda. So form is a quality of course, but it also should have a reflection. There is no anomaly in this. That's what Madhusudana Saraswati explains here. So Pratibimba Upalambhat, that means on account of this particular feature, Tayoho Sampratipanna Pratibimba Vailakshanya Nirupanat. He says Tayoho, that means both, Sampratipanna, that means the reflection of either the form reflection of or the sound. Here two things are cited as examples here. One is form of or color of a red flower is reflected in the crystal. Second, sound has its reflection. So two things are taken here. So now he says Tayoho, that means both of form and sound, Sampratipanna Pratibimba Vailakshanya, that means difference from this accepted reflection, Anirupanat, not established. That means it is difficult to establish the difference of these two from the accepted reflection. That means they too are also reflections. So that's why they are not different from the accepted reflection. Sound has a resound reflection, form also has a reflection. So though they don't have any property, they are reflected in their substratum. Similarly, consciousness which has no property at all can get reflection in the intellect. Tadhapi, now another doubt here, Tadhapi Indriya Grahyasyaiva Pratibimbaha iti chet. Now he says, okay, temporarily we may accept your theory. But the problem is, a reflection can be possible of that object which can be grasped by senses. That means which is a matter of sensual perception. Whatever I can see, hear, whatever I can know through my senses, that alone can get reflection. So the two examples you have quoted earlier, the Rupa and Shabda, both are perceived, both are known through senses. Therefore, their example cannot suit in the present context, because this is the context of consciousness, and Rupa and Shabda are matter of sensual perception, whereas consciousness is not a matter of perception by senses. So there is difference. If somebody says that, Madhusudana Saraswati explains Vyabhicharat, that means no, there is inconsistency. That means whatever you have stated, that in order to get reflection, something must have the quality of being perceived by senses. It should be perceived by senses, that should be there. Then only it can have a reflection, because the form of an object is known through senses and it can have a reflection. Shabda, which is heard by our ears, can have a reflection because it is grasped through senses. But when it comes to the consciousness, it is not grasped by our senses. Therefore, you cannot give this example to ascertain that. Now Madhusudana Saraswati says there is vyabhicharat, that means there is inconsistency. What is that inconsistency? He says anindriya grahyasya sakshi pratyakshasya akashasyapi jalado pratibimba upalambhat. Now he ascertains his position, saying that you have said that in order to have a reflection, the thing should be perceived by senses. But we observe that your logic suffers from the problem of inconsistency, because we observe on the other side the akasha, sky, has a reflection, but it is not indriya grahya. Akasha is not something which is perceived by any sense. Still, it is reflected somewhere. It is a matter of reflection, where he says Jalado, in water, etc. So we observe that in small ponds, lakes and water reservoirs, we observe the reflection of the sky. But when it comes to the understanding of the sky directly, the sky is not directly perceived through senses. So thus, though sky is not a matter of direct perception, it has a reflection in the waters, etc. Similarly, consciousness, though it is not grasped by senses, it has reflection. This we should accept. Sakshi pratyakshasya. Where is the sky? Sky is not a matter of perception of external senses. It is only sakshi pratyaksha. That means it is comprehended by the observer within, not by the senses. So, on account of this logic also, we have to accept that the consciousness can have reflection. Anyatha, that means if we don't accept the reflection of sky in the water, etc., janumatrepi udake ati gambhira pratitihi na syat. He argues that when somebody walks into a small water reservoir and the water comes to his knee level, janumatrepi udake ati gambhira pratitihi, but when he looks down, he finds somewhere at a distance the reflection of sky, and it appears that it is very deep there. Just because of the reflection of sky only in the waters, it appears to be very deep waters there. But when he physically walks into that, he finds that the water comes only to the knee level. So this is the anomaly there, that the akasha, which has no form at all, which is not grasped by senses at all, is reflected in the waters. Otherwise, how can we get that kind of experience? And one more thing, akasha pratibimbasya sakshibhasyatvepi adhishtana grahanartham chakshushaha apekshanat. Now we observe that here sky is not grasped by senses. That means you cannot look at the sky, etc. They say. Now you have given the example of sky its reflection in the waters, etc. But you yourself have said that it is not matter of perception. So how is there? How to grasp the reflection of sky in the waters? This is the problem. Now, Madhusudana Saraswati said, of course, we have explained to you that the Akasha is known by the observer, the Sakshi. Yes, but still, Adhisthana Grahanartham, that means the place of reflection, the place where something is reflected, that particular one should be comprehended, and that is known through eyes. Chakshushaha apekshanat. That means to know where it is reflected, we require the contact of eyes. So, though Akasha is some reality which is known by the Sakshi or the observer, its reflection in water is understood through eyes, because we see the base of that Adhisthana, the base of the reflection there. So, especially in the example of the perception of silver on conch shell, snake on the rope, we observe that exactly the contact is with the external object. The snake or the silver is not present there, but still eyes are required there to get contact with that particular object outside. So it is either rope or conch shell, and eyes get in contact with that. But the problem of that particular illusion is that the eyes get connected with that, and only one particular aspect of that external object is reflected, and on account of some similarity, the mind gets on to the previous impression, and because of that previous impression or knowledge of something, on account of similarity, mind projects snake or silver which is not present outside, which is only an impression inside. So here, though Sakshi Bhasya, we say the role of external senses is not completely denied, they also have a role. Etena Neelam Nabhaha Ityadi Vibhramepi Chakshuhu Anvaya Vatirekau Vyakhyatau. So, if you understand this particular phenomenon, then you can explain why people say blue sky, etc. So, when people say it is blue sky, they have an illusion. It is only a miscomprehension or illusion. Here also, you understand Chakshuhu Anvaya Vatirekau. Chakshuhu means Chakshushaha Chakshurindriyasya Anvaya Vatirekau. Anvayascha Vatirekascha. That means wherever there is eye, there is that kind of illusion. Wherever there is no sight or eye operation, there that kind of illusion is not there. So it all depends on the operation of eye. That means it should function. So the eye looks at something and says it is Neelam Nabhaha, blue sky. And Shankara Bhagavatpada in his Bhashya Bhumika refuted this particular thing, that Balaha Talamalinitam Adhyasyanti. That means though there is nothing called sky, blueness of sky or blue sky, just ignorant people say that there is blue sky just because of their sight. Thus, here also we find that Neelam Nabhaha etc. is possible on account of this particular illusion, and there the role of external sense organ cannot be denied. Tatra Salokasya Akashasya Adhishthanatvat. So why is the sky looking blue? He says Salokasya Akashasya. That means the space there, because of the light reflected, appears to be blue, he says. Salokasya, that means aloka is the light, and salokasya means due to the refraction of light there, akashasya, that sky appears to be blue, and that is the adhisthana there for this kind of illusion. So everywhere, especially in the context of this particular illusion, there should be some adhara or substratum, locus. And here also, when somebody gets the illusion called the sky is blue, the sky which is the together with the light there, light particles there, so that appears to be blue, but there is nothing called blue sky. Tasmat, therefore, chakshusha bimbameva Rupa sapeksham na anyat. So here we understand Rupa sapeksham. That means what can have a reflection? The opponent says that which has a form and that which is a matter of external perception, that alone can have a reflection. That is his problem. And now Madhusudana Saraswati explains that here we should come to the conclusion that Chakshusha Bimbam, that means the thing which is known through external senses, that means which is perceived externally, Chakshusha Bimba, that is the image, Rupa Sapeksham Nanyat. So that alone requires form to get a reflection. That means a thing which can be seen with eyes requires the eyes for its reflection. Whereas in that particular context, we find that the consciousness is not something which is grasped by our external senses. Therefore, for its reflection, it does not require any form at all. So, in the beginning, actually this particular discussion began with this, that nirupasya niravayavasya pratibimba anupapattehe, etc. He said, that means the consciousness has no form, no dharma, etc. And now Madhusudana Saraswati has conclusively stated here that it applies to all the external things which are perceived by eyes, and for their reflection they require a form. But when it comes to our consciousness, it is not perceived by eyes, therefore it doesn't require any form to have a reflection. Na anyat. So that alone is required here, and consciousness does not require any form for its reflection. Tadhapi, even then, if somebody insists on producing some particular proof in this, pratibimbe kim pramanam. So what is the proof? So logically you have satisfied us. Logically you have established that the consciousness too can have a reflection. But kim pramanam, what is the proof behind once again? Iti ched shrunu. Then Madhusudana Saraswati, only to satiate their thirst, says the scriptures also are pramana or evidence here. Rupagum rupam pratirupo babhuva tadasya rupam pratijakshanaya maya bhasena jiveshau karoti. He quotes several sentences from the Vedic scriptures. He says, Rupagum rupam pratirupam babhuva. This is Shvetashvatar Upanishad also says that though one, the single reality, single energy, it becomes many. It assumes several forms. So all the forms are only reflection of that particular reality. So the true energy is the image, and all appearance is its reflection. That means the reflection resembles the image but different from that. So here we understand that single reality can have reflection in various forms. This is one. And secondly, tadasya rupam pratichakshanaya. Tat asya rupam. That means the consciousness is the image on which the entire world experience as reflection is based. Pratichakshanaya. Pratichakshana is explained as vyavahara. That means we observe that the worldly transaction is multifarious. We observe that being in this body we function variously, I, mine, etc. So this is the base of all the transaction, and therefore he says that is the pratichakshanaya. That means the consciousness being one appears many, and it is the cause of all transactions. Maya bhasena jiveshau karoti. And Maya abhasena. So what is this Maya? That is the avidya or spiritual ignorance. And it karoti, that means it projects what? Jiva, Isha, that means Bimba and Pratibimba. Here we understand that the Ishvara is the Bimba, then Jiva will be its Pratibimba. Some people accept a different theory. They say that Shuddha Chaitanya is Bimba and Jiva and Ishvara both are Pratibimba. So several theories are there. But here Madhusudana Saraswati furnishes one theory here, that Jiva and Isha, here two things, Ishvara being the Bimba or image and Jiva being the reflection or Pratibimba, and both are created by the Maya, by Avidya. How? Abhasena, just on account of this particular semblance. That means on account of the Jiva's semblance with Ishvara, the Ishvara is reflected as Jiva only. So this is the Pratibimba Vada. Ityadi Shrutihi. And Shankara Bhagavad-pada also explains in Manisha Panchakam and even in this Dakshinamurti Stotra, that the Jiva out of his avidya creates all this multifarious world, including Ishvara. That means the Ishvara is also a conjecture of the Jiva, or it is his projection because of his limited knowledge, or because of his limited cognition. He understands the cause of this universe as something different and endowed with more power, omnipotent, all that. So it is also something created out of nescience. That's what the Advaita system says. Not only this scripture, Vedic scripture, the Smriti are also authority in this. How? Ekadha bahudha chaiva drushyate jalachandravat. The consciousness or the supreme reality is ekadha. Sometimes it appears as one. Bahudha chaiva. Sometimes it appears as many also. Drushyate jalachandravat. It appears just as the moon in the water. We understand that the reflection of moon is seen at several places. So in a pond nearby, the moon is different. But if there are 10 ponds, there can be 10 reflections. Similarly, the consciousness, the pure absolute consciousness, has the reflections in the form of the Jiva and all the other things. That's why it has the dual nature. It can be single and it can be many. Ekoham bahusyam prajayeya. So that's what the scriptures explain, that being single, it can be many, and being many, it can be single also. So that is the enigmatic nature of this particular reality. And further it says, Sa esha iha pravishtaha anakhagrebhyaha sa etameva simanam vidarya etaya dvara prapadyata tat srishtva tadevanupravishat ityadi pravesha shruti arthapattihi. That means now the consciousness has a reflection. It enters all the reflections. How? It says Sa esha. That means the supreme reality, iha pravishtaha, entered into his creation, anakhagrebhyaha. Throughout the body his presence can be felt till the end of our nails. Anakhagrebhyaha. That means till the tip of our nails we can feel the presence of that divine reality. So it says, the scripture says, that the divine reality has descended into his creation. Sa etameva simanam vidarya. Saha, that reality, etam eva simanam vidarya, breaking this particular conjunction. Etaya dvara, through this particular path, prapadyata, he attained that, he entered into this. That means in this body also, through this particular Sushumna Sthana or Sahasrara Kendra, the divine reality entered into the body. It says, Etameva simanam vidarya, etaya dvara, means through this path only, prapadyata, so the divine reality or energy entered into the body. Tat srishtva tadevanupravishat. After creating the particular thing, tadeva anupravishat, the cause has entered into it through that. That means the cause is one with the effect here, and after creating that, it becomes one with that. And we observe in the world also that when a part is produced from the clay is not separate after its creation. When a cloth is produced from threads, the threads are not different from the cloth. So everywhere we observe that the material cause cannot be different or away from its effect. And here the Supreme Reality created, and after creating that, it entered within. Ityadi Shruti, Ityadi Pravesha, that means Pravesha Shruti means the scriptural sentences expounding the entry of the divine energy in its creation, Arthapattihi, or just postulated here by the sense. That means after understanding the particular sense of these sentences, we understand again that the divine energy enters into its creation. Abhasa evacha atayeva chopama suryakadivat ityadi sutranicha tatra tatra manani. So these are the Brahma Sutra. Now Madhusudana Saraswati has quoted from the Upanishad, then Smriti, then the third one, Brahma Sutra. He says there are Brahma Sutra which endorse this particular theory. What are the sutra? One is Abhasa evacha. That means it is only the individual soul is only Abhasa. That means only an appearance, only a reflection. Atayevacha upama Surya kadivat. Surya is sun. Surya ka, that means reflection of the sun. Atayevacha upama. So on account of this particular nature only, the Brahma Sutra says the simile of reflection of sun is given here. That means the sun being single, there can be many reflections of the sun. Similarly, the material cause or the original cause of all this creation being one, there can be several many reflections. So thus the Brahma Sutra also authenticate the theory of Abhasavada or Pratibimba Vada. Tatra tatra manani, and this kind of sutra, bhashya, etc. are properly taken here as valid proof. So in a particular water pond or lake, when the reflection of sun appears to move because of some movement in the water, in another it may not have any movement at all. So this, the base or the substratum can have all the reactions, whereas the image remains in the sky and not affected by all these activities or the impurities of the source of the base of reflection. So here we understand that the pure consciousness is like the sun, it illuminates everything. Though there is reflection of that in many substrata, the impurities of substrata do not accrue to that particular image. That is the idea here. Tasya cha pratibimbasya satyatvam iti pratibimba vadinaha. Now two ideologies are presented here, Pratibimba Vada and Abhasa Vada. According to the followers of the Pratibimba Vada, who accept the reflection of super consciousness in the intellect, the reflection is also real. Pratibimbasya satyatvam, that means the reflection is also absolutely real according to the theories here. And according to the Abhasa Vadin, that means who holds on to the theory that it is only Abhasa, that means appearance, they say mithyatvam, the reflection is not real, it is only some appearance, therefore it is unreal. Swarupetu na vivadaha. But when it comes to the true nature of the consciousness, both have same idea, both unanimously accept that the image or pure consciousness cannot have any decay, any destruction. It is one, secondless, it is absolute. So regarding this particular theory, they don't have any objection at all. But when it comes to the reflection, they have their own theories. Somebody says the reflection is real, other person says no, the reflection cannot be real, because the image alone is the real, reflection is only something, some appearance. Thus there are varying views, but still Swarupe na vivadaha. When it comes to the true nature of the image, there is no argument at all. There is no dispute at all. Iti anyadetat. Of course, this need not be elaborated here because all are Advaitins, and therefore we need not contradict here. Some may hold different theory. But when it comes to the true nature of that absolute consciousness, all the Advaitins in unequivocal terms hold one theory, that the Atma is Brahman and Brahman is the lone reality, Paramarthika Satya, and everything else, especially in front of that Brahman, is only something to be negated, something to be discarded. And therefore this theory is very important here. Madhusudana Saraswati reconciles this, and now he says Achetana Vilakshanatvantu Shruti Siddham Anubhava Siddhancha. Now whatever you said that it is Drushya, that is Ghatadivat Jada, he says one thing is there, Achetana Vilakshana. The Jiva is different from the inert objects. Achetana Vilakshana, insentient objects. And this particular nature of the self is endorsed by the Shruti, that means the scriptures, and established by one's own experience. That I is the consciousness here, I is the energy in the body, and it actually drives the body, the senses, everything, and it is the source of all our experience. Now, Tasmat Siddham. Now, Madhusudana Saraswati presents here the final theory. He says, Antahkaranasya Pratibimba Adhyasa Dvara Pramatritvam iti Siddham. Now he says, now the final theory is established here, that Antahkarana, that means the inner sense organ, becomes Pramata. That means actually it is not the pure consciousness or Sakshi, it is only the Antahkarana. Antahkarana is the Pramata. Therefore, it only gets the experience. It is the substratum of all our conscious comprehensions and cognitions. Now, Antahkarana is Jada. How can it take all the cognitions? Now, Madhusudana Saraswati has very intelligently explained there that this can be resolved in two ways. One, you say that the semblance of consciousness is transmitted to that intellect, and therefore it is also able to grasp the things. Or you can say it is just superimposed. The property of consciousness is temporarily superimposed on the intellect, and therefore it also gets the cognitions. And Antahkaranasya Pratibimba Adhyasa Dwara. Now, Pratibimba is the Jiva, and its Adhyasa means its superimposition on what? On this intellect. So when the nature of this Jiva, who is Pratibimba of the original Brahma, reflected or just superimposed on the intellect temporarily becomes Pramata. Therefore, in the state of deep sleep, this particular phenomenon is absent, and therefore there is only Sakshi, there is no Antahkarana, and because of that there is no Pramata, Pramiti, Pramana, Prameya. So the fourfold Prama group is not there, because Antahkarana is absent, and Antahkarana being absent, there cannot be Pramata also. So everything revolves around this particular Adhyasa or superimposition. So here, because the quality or the nature of this Pratibimba is superimposed on intellect, the intellect can grasp the things outside, so temporarily it is the Pramata there. And Shankara Bhagavatpada explains in the beginning of Sutra Bhashya, says the Pramata, Prameya, Pramanadi Vyavahara. So all these are Avidya Mulakani, Avidyakani, he says. That means these are all based on Adhyasa only, superimposition. One is pure consciousness, pure energy, and other is totally inert and insentient, lifeless. But because of its nearness, because of its superimposition, the inert Antahkarana or internal organ also can reflect the things, and temporarily it can be the cause of all reflections. So we can take the example of any iron rod or any metal. Temporarily, if we place that on a very hot pan or fire, temporarily it gets the heat of that, and temporarily that metal object also transmits, it becomes the conductor, and temporarily it appears as if the metal object itself is the fire there. But after some time we understand that the metal object goes back to its own nature. Then this adhyasa is removed. Similarly here also, the mind, the intellect, though they are inert, lifeless, they get the semblance of consciousness temporarily, and they appear to be active, conscious for time being. And when their separation takes place, then they become inert, and pure consciousness alone shines forth. So he explains this, that antahkaranasya, that means the internal sense organ, pratibimba here is the jiva, adhyasa, that means superimposition of this jiva on the intellect, etc., dwara, through that pramatrutva. So the internal organ or the mind, intellect, they become pramata there, and pramatrutva is by the way of getting connected with the senses. So mind, intellect gets connected with the external senses, the external senses get connected with the outer object, and here we understand according to the Vedanta Paribhasha also that though there is single Chaitanya or consciousness throughout the universe, the outside object is the Prameya Chaitanya, that means the consciousness in the form of external object, and the eyes, etc., are the Pramana Chaitanya, that means the consciousness or energy in the form of senses, and there is inner organ, and that is the Pramatru Chaitanya, that means Antahkarana Upahita Chaitanya, that is the temporary Pramata, and it is the perceiver. So here it is imposed, then on the eyes, then on the object. So though there is single Chaitanya there, it is only understood variously, separately. So one is called as external object, another is called as eyes, another is called as mind or intellect. So this way various compartments are made there. But Advaita philosophy asks us to know the fact that the Chaitanya is present in the form of external object, the same energy has manifested in the form of the eyes, the same energy has manifested itself in the form of the internal organ or brain, etc. So everything is taking place within the province of this energy, that is the Brahma, and therefore the Upanishads are tempted to call this entire universe as Brahma Samrajya. So this is the great kingdom of the Brahman, one lone reality, and whoever wakes up into this particular reality becomes one with that, and he does not find any difference at all. And tatra ko mohaha kashokaha ekatvam anupashyataha, and the Ishavasya Upanishad also presents it in a beautiful way. It says, when a person perceives the entire world as one structure, one unit and one reality, then ko mohaha, where is illusion or delusion, and where is the sorrow, grief? Ko mohaha kashokaha. That means moha takes place when we want something, that is out of moha. This is expectation. And second thing, shoka, when we don't get that, or after getting that when we lose it, then shoka appears. So thus expecting something and losing that or not getting that, this shoka, moha and shoka, these two actually cause all kind of imbalance in the intellect. And now the Upanishads say the only way to get rid of this imbalance is to get on to the reality that there is only one reality, and that is the single unit throughout the universe, and that is the highest reality, of course. And Shankara Bhagavad-pada and all the Advaita teachers do not completely negate the existence of this universe. They say, though that is the ultimate reality, not everybody is eligible for that, and therefore in order to make us eligible for that kind of experience, we have to adopt some other methods also, like jnana, karma, dhyana, bhakti, upasana, and all these are supplementary to this. And when a person's internal sense organ is purified with the help of all these, he will be able to get on to that particular realization, and once that realization takes place, then his long journey throughout several bodies in the form of the soul ends, and he will not have any rebirths. So that is the secret of Advaita philosophy propounded in the Upanishads, expounded by Shankara Bhagavatpada, and now differently explained by Madhusudana Saraswati also. So thus Madhusudana Saraswati has elucidated the concept of Advaita, that the pramata or the perceiver is the internal sense organ, not the true self. True self is always the observer, but the pure consciousness has a reflection in the form of the jiva, and because the intellect is in the proximity of this, it has the superimposition. The jiva is superimposed on the intellect, and now intellect becomes the pramata. And here Madhusudana Saraswati has explained what the Pratibhimbavada says, what the Abhasavada says. So one may take the reflection as real or unreal. Ultimately, nobody has any dispute regarding the true nature of the pure consciousness. It is the Brahman, and it alone is the reality. That is the theory of Advaita. So here we stop, and we will see in the next class what the other major Advaita theories are propounded by Madhusudana Saraswati. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.